She's an award-winning YouTuber and best-selling author obsessed with helping you go after the life you want.
I like it.
Join her as she seeks out the stories and strategies
Give me every little detail.
of extraordinary people who found success.
I'm going to get emotional. Oh my God.
Welcome to Detail Therapy with Amy Landino.
But I think the secret to that is, again, being clear about what you're trying to accomplish and not compromising those values, even if sometimes it doesn't lead to economic rewards immediately. I think in the long term, sticking to your guns and doing what you believe in is the right thing.
Hello there. Welcome to Detail Therapy. You just heard a little snippet from my chat with Chris Hamel. In this episode, we are going to be talking about what it's like to not only be a business owner, but a critic and the decision maker of what movies will play in a local community, what it's like to actually meet Sandra Bullock, and running a business as a little guy when there are a lot of big guys in your space. This is a really fun and interesting episode today. Before we dive in, for those of you who do not know who I am, my name is Amy Landino and I will be your host. I'm a YouTube creator, professional speaker, best-selling author, and entrepreneur. I'm here to help you go after the life you want. And you can find out more details about that by going to youtube.com/AMYTV. This episode is going to be a little bit different, but I feel like I'm not really doing my job right on this show if I don't think that's always the case. My goal is to bring people on that bring a fresh perspective of what it looks like to go after their version of success. And I think Chris is such a shining example of how he's affecting a local community in a big way, but also with some kind of weird random glamour in what he does. And working in the movie world as someone who runs a local movie theater in our little community here in Columbus, Ohio, it's actually not that little. A lot of people probably think I live in a cow town. Let me tell you something. We have a population of over 2 million people. We are the 14th largest city in the United States. I believe it's at 14 still. And that's a pretty big deal, especially for someone who is playing movies with such a high population of people to come check them out. That culture and making that difference is really, really big. Not to mention the fact that how do you become this person? How do you become somebody who is deciding what is cool in movie culture for one particular theater and for the people that come to visit? And how do you keep that appeal? I think the immersive environment is going to be a resonating topic that we talk about today. And if you are trying to do something artistic, creative, and also as a decision maker in your career, you're going to love this. So we're going to get into that in just a second. But before we do, I have to give a little shout out to one of our fabulous reviewers of this show. And that goes to Carrie Smith. Carrie said in her review of Detail Therapy, refreshingly professional. I don't know how Amy does it. She works with complete excellence, yet you literally feel like you could grab a coffee with her. A true leader. Carrie, that is over the top, super kind, amazing words. Thank you so much. The fact that you're listening to the show and took the time to leave a review means the world to me. And I am so pleased to hear this because my goal is for you to feel like you're a fly on the wall, literally, or you're at the table with us while we're having coffee when I'm talking to people. You are a part of this conversation even more than myself and anyone I bring on this show. So I'm glad that that resonates with you. I'm so excited that you listen, and everyone else who also listens, really appreciate your time more than you could imagine. If you would like to leave a review, you can do that. Would love to see 5 stars. If not, whatever. It's totally your prerogative. What do you think of the show? I need to know so I can continue to make it better for you. So please leave a review. You may get a shout out in a future episode of Detail Therapy. Also, keep in mind that everything we talk about here will be found in the show notes. That's at detailspodcast.com. And now let's dive into this discussion with Chris Hamel. Chris Hamel is the president of the Gateway Film Center, which is Central Ohio's first dedicated film center to feature a diverse mix of independent and commercial film in an intimate and stimulating environment. I absolutely love Chris. I've known him for a lot of years. We've worked on a project called Columbus Land together, which I'm hoping is going to be coming back very, very soon. And I would love to share that with you. So stay tuned for that. But I just think, again, Chris is such a great example of affecting a local community. And if you're going to affect the world, you need to start with where you are right now. So let's get into this chat with Chris Hamel. Chris Hamel, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Tell me why you advocate for the film industry.
Well, I come from a family of movie lovers, and I had the privilege as a child of being exposed to lots of films. And, I got lucky. I had the opportunity to make that into a career. And I believe in the power of visual storytelling. I have seen the impact it can have on people's lives. Some people see it as an opportunity to learn and engage, and that's great. And some people use it as an escape from the world, and that's also great. And so I feel, as I said, a great sense of privilege that I get to work in this industry, and it's also very fun.
Yeah. You're the president of the Gateway Film Center. I've known you for a lot of years, and I feel like I know a lot of things about you, but I'm also really excited to chat with you because I feel like there's stuff about your career I haven't quite ever learned. But if you had to explain to somebody what you do, whether it's just your job at the Film Center or overall in the film world, like how would you explain to somebody that has no idea what Gateway Film Center is?
Well, first, the basics of my job as the president of the center are running almost the same as running any business, right? We have bills to pay, and we have about 75 employees, which often surprises people because we're this little independent, not-for-profit movie theater in Columbus, Ohio. So most of my day is spent leading and coaching and training and working with the great team we've put together there. The sexier part of the job is this movie connection. And not by design, I have been the programmer of Gateway Film Center also for 10 years. So I get to watch a lot of films. That is a luxury item of my job. And I get to program the venue. So I select all of our features and all of our shorts and coordinate them. So I would say that is usually more interesting to people than the reading of financial statements and making business choices.
Definitely. For a period of time, I was on your advocacy committee,
yes,
which is a while ago.
Thank you.
Which was fun. Yeah, for sure. It was great for me because I was always trying to find ways to get more involved in my local community because I just feel like if you can't help your own community, how are you going to help the world? And I learned a lot about the movie theater world because I just didn't realize how, I guess, everything has its politics and its things. But it was just so bizarre to me. And at the time, I remember you telling me that Columbus is actually one of the most screened cities in the U.S.
Correct.
Is that still true?
It is.
I mean, that's a lot to think about, especially the fact that at the time I was on the committee, I think there were some other local theaters starting to shut down and bigger brands were coming in and buying them up. So there's a lot of big brand movie theaters in Columbus. That's probably part of the reason we're very overscreened. And Gateway is one of the last locally owned.
Correct.
That's insane. That makes your job a little bit different than most movie theaters in the city, right?
It does. It's both a blessing and a curse. If you had an opportunity, Amy, and you wanted to do something at the center, I mean, the decision makers are in the room, right? And we can have a personal relationship and. Mm-hmm. And to your point, you can serve on a committee and be part of it. And so that's an advantage. We're nimble and we're part of the community and we listen. Those big box store theaters do a lot of things right, but those decision makers are in, if it's AMC, that's a Chinese company. If it's Regal, they're based in Tennessee. If it's Cinemark, they're based in Texas. So, when you engage with independents wherever you live, you can have those local connections, and it's a lot more fun in some moments because, again, you can really become part of the fabric of a community.
I think that's just stood out to me as something so important to you, not just for the theater, but clearly your own mission is aligned to make this work. Because I just remember us bonding over our little production Columbus Land that we were doing, and I think we're going to start to see that to come back. But we would be getting drinks, and you'd be like, I got to go. This huge movie company is calling me, a production company's calling me, yelling at me that I'm not playing their movie.
Right.
And that is such a bizarre part of your job. I just thought, wow, that is fascinating that someone might be saying, why aren't you playing this? But you're extremely, it's important where Gateway Film Center is located.
Right.
The population of the urban core of Columbus, but specifically Ohio State University with so many students.
Right.
The fact that you have these production houses calling you and saying, excuse me, President Hamel, why are you not playing my blockbuster? You're playing some YouTube documentary right now. I mean, what is that like? How do you deal with that?
Well, your question before this one really was perfect. You sort of described what's happening there, which is there's about 40,000 movie screens in the United States, and the vast majority of them are owned by big corporations.
Mm-hmm.
And so the studios are also big corporations. And so their expectations on a weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual basis are that 20th Century Fox is going to put out 12 movies, and all those theaters and their theater chains are going to play all 12. So when you try to do something more nuanced and interesting, to your point, a YouTube documentary or the Film Center is committed to playing a film made outside the United States every single day forever. And so those are not part of the big studio model. So to show empathy for them, it's confusing. And they don't think about my venue the way you and I do, which is it's a really important part of our community, and playing every 20th Century Fox, not picking on them.
Sure.
Film is not what's best for us, and it's not what's best for our community. It's what's best for 20th Century Fox. And so there is quite a bit of back and forth, but I do believe what we're doing is important, and I still believe in the studio system. For those 12 films they put out, a couple of them are really damn good. And a couple of them are kind of clunkers. So we try to avoid the clunkers and bring in the good ones.
I just love that you get to decide. Like your job, part of it, is not just paying bills and things, but employing people and picking out what movies are, essentially like that is your content. You also sell it, but you sell other things too. And so you have to decide, how much money are we going to make on these movies, but specifically what movies are going to keep people coming to the center, especially one in you're in a fortunate position, but also could be compromising being locally owned. You're a nonprofit. A big box could just sort of like take up all the population for some reason if they became popular and Ohio State stopped coming to or a lot of other people. But just the fact that you're picking that content and saying, okay, I'm going with my gut here on what's really going to make our audience happy. You have to really know who those people are. So how do you make that decision? Is it sometimes a movie that you don't like?
Yes, but not very often.
Really?
When we first started the center, when we first opened the center, I made a lot of choices that I would not make today just because I got better at it. And also, these passing a lot of films and trying over and over and over again to explain what it is we're trying to do, a lot of those studios have started to listen, and so... And the other thing that, we don't talk about very often is the Film Center is quite competitive when we do open a film. So Black Panther, for example, was one of the highest grossing films of the year in 2018. It's also the highest grossing film ever at Gateway Film Center.
Wow.
And so that does make the studios want the venue more, but also it proves my point. If you allow us to curate, if you allow us to make good choices, you will also be rewarded. And, we also don't have 30 screens. So we have 8.
Right.
So we can't play every movie, and we are not going to give up our commitment to playing the small ones, the independent ones, the festival darlings, the world cinema titles. And if it ever came down to having to choose, we would choose those over the studio films.
Just one resonating thing out of this for me is I feel like something I talk to people about all the time. They're always asking me sort of like the secret to how I do one thing or another thing. And it always comes back to who I'm doing it for, not for necessarily what I want to do. Do you think that that's a big reason why these studios are starting to listen to you, is because you just really know who's walking through the door?
I do. And again, these are people. So the more you tell them the same story, the more that you talk about your own values and what it is you're trying to accomplish, the more they start to hear it, right? Mm-hmm. And they have a job to do, and I want to be empathetic to that. But I am trying to do something that's special. And, when they decide to hear that, they're pretty reasonable. So, but I think the secret to that is, again, being clear about what you're trying to accomplish and not compromising those values, even if sometimes it doesn't lead to economic rewards immediately. I think in the long term, sticking to your guns and doing what you believe in is the right thing.
I completely agree. And I think it's so fascinating, not just how maybe the studios have underestimated, but even some of our local community itself has underestimated the abilities of the Film Center. Can you share what you did? Last night was Valentine's Day. I did not go to the movies. I went to see Hamilton, but sorry, no, I'll come in next week.
Good.
What did you do at the Film Center for Valentine's Day?
Well, I'll give you a little bit of a long answer.
Okay.
2 years ago, we launched a year-long program called Cult 101, and we had a panel of 40 experts choose the 101 greatest cult movies of all time. And then in 2017, we screened all 101 of them at the center. And that was probably, in addition to being the most challenging, the best received program we have ever done.
Wow.
And so it ended on December 31st, 2017. And like January 2nd, 2018, I started getting emails about, well, what's the next series? And I'm not going to lie, the first thing I thought was none. I'm not doing this again. It was too hard.
That baby, it's done. Yeah.
But then I went to Sundance, and I had some of my team out there, and we started brainstorming a little bit. Like, if we wanted to do another one, what would we do? And so we talked about romance. We talked about Westerns. We talked about gangster movies. We talked about world cinema. We talked about science fiction, and we talked about horror. And we landed on horror. So in the summer, we got another panel together. And there was everything from Paramount Pictures to Yahoo to USA Today participated, and a bunch of experts in that field. And they selected the 101 greatest horror movies of all time.
Wow.
And so we're screening all 101 of them at the Film Center this year in 2019. And so opening night was Valentine's Day. We screened Candyman. Bernard Rose.
That movie is so scary.
Well, first of all, I don't know if you can get a better title for Valentine's Day.
Very true.
But Bernard Rose made that film in 1992. It's still very scary. I rewatched it because I hadn't seen it in a long time. And it was a huge sellout. And I'll tell you the other thing it was a really special moment, I think, for everybody who was there because, it's cool to go to the movies because there's big screens and good sound. But it's even cooler to be around a whole bunch of people who care about a thing the way you do.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure you had the same experience at Hamilton.
Oh, yeah, totally. The laughter, the covering of the face, depending on if you're watching a horror or not. Yeah.
And, Candyman's really interesting because Tony Todd's character was really the first African-American star of a horror film. So the film also has some pretty significant social positioning going on. And you may have heard Jordan Peele's remaking it. So there'll be a new Candyman next year that Jordan Peele's making.
Oh, my gosh. What do you think about Jordan Peele and his work? Like, he's doing some crazy stuff.
Well, he's certainly incredibly talented.
Yeah.
I think we knew that before. Then we all saw Get Out and went, whoa. And he's.
I haven't seen Get Out, and I've decided it's probably wise because it just looks so scary. I'm not into horror.
If you change your mind, it is actually screening. It was voted into the 101 best horror films of all time, so it's screening in March.
Oh my gosh!
It's screening the same time as new film comes out, Us. So we'll screen Get Out for that.
Yeah, that's another one. These are But last night, I think it's interesting. We were talking before we started recording that there were a lot of people all dressed up with somewhere to go for Valentine's Day, and they didn't get their tickets to the Candyman screening, and they didn't realize. Gateway's got a little bit of a following. They buy their tickets in advance.
Well, the marketing team did a really great job getting the word out about Horror 101 and Candyman. And then, we did a lot of fun things. And you know how we do things. We had a local artist make custom Candyman Valentines. And so every person who got a ticket last night got a Valentine from Candyman.
Oh, my God.
We had customized conversation hearts with the logos and the dates on them. Conversation hearts weren't sold in the United States this year.
Oh, wow.
So that was fun. And tonight we're doing a partnership. We're screening it. We're doing our first ever VHS screening tonight.
VHS, for all the kids that don't know what a VHS is. That was before the DVD.
Sure was. And a lot of people who found movies like Candyman watched them on their VCRs, right?
Wow. Yeah.
And so for the first time ever, we figured out how to project that through our projection system. So we'll do that tonight, and everybody gets pizza with the screening tonight, and there's a cool after party.
See, it's stuff like this. I feel like that's what makes what you're doing so special, because even if like the big guy down the street was doing something similar, there wouldn't be in my opinion, I just don't see where there would be the same like community feel around it. One really big successful sort of, I don't want to call it a campaign, but just honestly, it's a ritual every year is your Groundhog Day challenge. Can you share what that is?
Sure. We did our 10th year in a row. On February 2nd, we screened Groundhog Day for 24 hours straight. And if people choose to watch all the screenings.
And when do they have to choose? Because at this point, it's pretty popular.
Yeah, it's sold out very early this year. And tickets are not cheap. It's like $100 to go to that thing now.
And if they watch all 24 hours of it with no phones, no iPads.
That's right.
Nothing.
There are very specific rules. They cannot watch something else. They can't leave during the movie.
You can only go to the bathroom in between.
That's right. And but if they complete the challenge, they get a year's worth of movie tickets. So, and this year, I think only 13 people did not finish, and 3 of them didn't follow the rules, and they had to leave, unfortunately.
Out of?
About 250.
That's insane.
Yeah, so it is a ritual. You said the right word.
Yeah.
But I think you also said it perfectly. And that's when you build a community, obviously, for us, film is the conduit. Right? That's how we get people together. But then when they are together, we got to deliver an experience that's unique.
Yeah.
And unique gets the word unique is overused a lot. It actually means there is no other thing like it in the world.
Right.
And I think we've done that. We're still evolving and getting better. But from being at the center plenty of times, like it doesn't feel like any place else. And we are part of that, but the audience is really who's delivering that experience. And when you go to Groundhog Day and the person sitting next to you is like, put your iPad away or you're going to get in trouble, that's awesome. There's no usher running up and down the stairs to make sure you didn't look at your phone. It's the audience policing themselves. And I think that's really special.
It is really special. So I'm curious, how did you end up the president of Gateway Film Center? What has your career been like? How did you even get started in movies, other than your love of it as in childhood?
Well, I've sort of had 2 careers. And because I came from this, my mother was a huge movie buff and took me to see lots and lots of movies when I was young. And she was also a supporter of independent cinemas. So here in Columbus, we have the Drexel Theater, and we went there a lot when I was a kid. And so when I got my first job in high school, I wanted to work in the movie theater. And so when I was 14, started sweeping theater floors and making popcorn. And I ended up working in movie theaters all the way through college. And when I graduated, I moved to Dallas, Texas, and worked for one of those big chains in their training department for a few years. And then I had always thought I'd work in movie marketing, not movie operations. And so I wasn't super happy with where I was. So I moved back to Columbus, and I opened a bar and a coffee house, and also started working in advertising. So with 2 partners, I started an agency, and that was where I spent the majority of my career. All of the 2000s, I pretty much worked in advertising, and I owned several agencies and then worked for a bigger agency that bought mine. And then that agency was bought by a bigger agency. I worked for them for a while. And the people who had originally developed the Gateway, I knew as a client. They were a client of ours. And they had asked me in early 2009 that the cinema existed already. It was run by Landmark Theaters, and it was struggling. And so they asked me if I would be interested in potentially helping them figure out what to do with it. And so I wrote a business plan. And they paid me very well for that. And my girlfriend at the time and I went to Europe, and it was fun, and I thought that was it. But in the business plan, I told them, I think the secret to making this work is it's got to be grassroots. It's got to be local. And this was also in the Great Recession. So I was like, and it's got to be operated independently, but not ineffectively. So you got to sort of bring in the best of what those corporate theaters do. And also you got to find an identity that's independent, right? Yeah. And so they really liked that plan. And after a few more meetings, asked me if I would take it over. And at first I was not interested because I was mostly in Los Angeles. I still lived part-time in Columbus, but I was going from LA to Minneapolis. But they talked me into it. And here we are 10 years later. And Gateway Film Center is a thing.
That's crazy. That's crazy to think about. It's sort of your involvement in a career path that wasn't even really necessarily movie related other than some client work led to you getting back into the movie world again. What do you think was the hardest part of making that decision of saying, I'm going to take the lead on this and actually follow through on my own plan that I designed?
Well, the hardest part was money, to be quite frank.
Yeah.
The economics of it were challenging for me because I was doing okay in my advertising career. I had worked my way up through those organizations, and I managed a pretty large portfolio. And but the passion of doing something you love and you believe in, I might have been working in advertising, but I was that guy who still went to 2 or 3 movies a week, right? And so the hardest part was the economics, but the easiest part was the passion. And when I took the film center, I really didn't know I would be there for 10 years. I thought it might actually be a nice escape for a few years. But the work was harder than I anticipated. And being accepted in the community, the center was much harder than I anticipated. And so now I never think about leaving. I just think about how are we going to get that thing where it needs to be. But yes, it was hard to make that move.
So that's interesting. Do you think that you realized the passion was so strong that all of those difficulties, all those obstacles, all those things that maybe you weren't the greatest expert at, but you were the guy in charge, made it all worth it to stick it out?
I think, yeah, I do. And also, I wasn't and still am not willing to leave it until it has reached a good portion of its potential. I think the thing has an incredible opportunity. I think we've just barely scratched the surface. And I continue to believe that visual storytelling in the movies, that's the art form that the United States has had the most influence on in the world. And I'm lucky I get to be part of it. So I'm not really in any hurry to give it up.
Love that. You're lucky. Let's talk about some of the perks of what you're doing.
Okay.
Particularly, what is it like to go to Sundance Film Festival? I'm dying to know.
Well, the Sundance Film Festival is like the Film Center on steroids. Okay, so it's one of my 2 favorite film festivals in the world. The other one is the Toronto International Film Festival. And honestly, I mentioned that plan I wrote in 2009 for the center. And the core brand position I wanted to create was a film festival every day. And when you go to Sundance, you're immersed in it. There are celebrities. Every restaurant has... You sit down at a bar to have a drink, and the person next to you has just seen a movie, and they say, "What did you see?" And I tell them, and I ask them what they saw, and they tell me, and we have this amazing conversation about filmmakers and actors, and what did they make before, and what did the writer do. That's really awesome. And so when you go to Sundance or you go to Toronto, you get to have those conversations for a week, and sometimes they're with celebrities, and sometimes they're with us, right? Yeah. And so I always wanted the film center to feel like that. And so some of the decisions we've made, like with restaurants and bars inside the building, they've always been in service to that belief that it could be a film festival every day. And I think we've accomplished some of that.
Yeah, I love that, because it sort of goes back to when you're trying to go after something or refine a skill or any of those things, allowing yourself to be in an immersive environment, which I think is what a festival or a conference or something like that would offer. You're surrounded by like-minded people in some way. Maybe they have different views than you, but they certainly agree with you on one thing in particular, and that's what you're there for. So you're trying to create that immersive experience, from the bars to the popcorn to the movies to even featuring local art in the hallways of the film center. I mean, you're creating an immersive environment there.
Yeah, I think you have to create a place where artists feel like their work is appreciated. And so, when we train new associates, when we go through orientation, we're talking about artists. We're saying, like, whether this movie is Amy's film and she's the writer and director and the photographer and is in the film, that's awesome. Or it's Black Panther and hundreds of people worked on it. It doesn't make any difference. They're all artists. And just because a thing achieves economic success doesn't mean it's not valuable. And so I love the person who, maxes out their credit cards and kills themselves for a year to make a piece of art. And I also have a lot of respect and appreciation for a film again, like Black Panther, which, yes, it went through the studio system, but a lot of really committed people worked really hard to put that thing together. I think in both cases, if you like a thing, if you love a thing, you got to treat them with the right respect. And so when you mentioned like the art gallery in the center, right? That's just bringing more people in, right? Those are movie-themed shows made by members of our community. And if you are a guest and you don't even notice, or you are an art lover who came to the center for the first time because you want to see that cool Hitchcock show that's hanging in the gallery, I think those are wins for the community.
That's awesome. Okay, well, since we're talking about Black Panther, I feel like because I believe this podcast is coming out right after the Oscars. So I have to ask you who you think is going to have the best chance at Best Picture. So I did make a list because I don't have a clue. I haven't been able to keep up. Black Panther, Black Klansman, Bohemian Rhapsody, The Favorite, Roma, A Star is Born, and Vice. Who do you think should take it?
So I'm going to give myself
You're either
going
to be right or wrong by the time this is
My odds are poor. I'm going to give myself some space and say this is the most wide open Oscar race in at least recent memory. I think Roma will win. And I think that's going to be a bellwether moment in our business because that's film from Netflix. And we played the film at the center.
I was going to ask, did you pick it to play?
We did. There were actually 7 70 millimeter prints in the world, and we got one at the center, and we screened it in January.
Wow.
And it's a beautiful film. Alfonso Cuarón, who made the film, is one of the greatest living filmmakers, and it's foreign language, which is also interesting. So I think Roma probably wins. I would not be shocked if Black Panther did.
Yeah.
But I think Roma probably wins.
Roma would be that like curveball that's like, oh, Netflix won again. And also, what is that movie? Did anybody?
Right on. There'll be a lot of people watching it the next day on Netflix if it wins. But it's a beautiful film, and it's deserving of the Oscar. The most deserving film doesn't always win.
Sure.
And I'm not saying it's the most deserving, but it wouldn't be a film that you'd be like, oh, I can't believe that
Yeah,
won.
right.
You could feel good about it. It's a good film.
Okay, cool. All right, we got the inside scoop there. Hopefully, I'm hoping you're right. I'm hoping you called it, and we're going to have it on the show. Okay, so I kind of want to hear what your day is like. Can you sum up for me what your morning routine is?
Sure. So I get up very early.
How early?
No later than 6 a.m. every day. I still have small children at home. So our ritual in the morning is breakfast is on the table at 7. My wife gets our children ready for school. I make breakfast. So at 7 o'clock, we sit down and get the kids ready for their day. So my initial focus of my business days is taking care of my kids. And I'm going to be very blunt with you. That has made me a much better person. If you start your day doing a thing to help others, it sort of gets you on the right path. Then I come in right after that in the morning. And the first thing I do, of course, is probably the same thing most of us do, which is I immediately check my calendar so that I'm prepared for the day. My leadership team briefs me every morning. So all of the directors and managers from the business every single morning come in and walk me through the highlights of the day. And then my day is, I think, probably a little more dull than you want to hear. I tend to have a lot of meetings, and we're always actively seeking partnerships and also managing partnerships with other like-minded community leaders. So I spend a lot of my time with those activities. And then when the afternoon comes is when I really focus on the sexier part, the movie part, because most of the industry is still based in Los Angeles. So the great part about it is I have until 8 p.m. Eastern. I can still call people. I can still talk on the phone because it's 5 o'clock in LA. And then I try to close my evenings every day by watching one movie. So
Every day?
Every day.
What a life.
Not really. So a lot of the films that we receive. So in many cases, I receive the movies much, much earlier than they are available for consumption, and I have to make choices. So if I don't have a ritual of watching one of them every day, I get very far behind.
Oh, that makes sense.
So I try every single day.
It's a perk, but it's homework.
It is homework. And the great part is I still love it.
Yeah.
I still get excited, but I do have a secret I don't always divulge, which is, like most people, I tend to do work while I'm watching. And if I cannot...
You would get kicked out of Groundhog Day.
I would be gone in a second. I wrote those rules, so I can't get kicked out. But the thing that I do is if I cannot work, that's a film to watch. If I can't focus on the busy work I have to get done.
So you're using it as like a barometer.
I am.
Wow.
And I don't tell people that a lot because I don't want to sound disrespectful to the artists or the films. I respect them, as you have heard me say, immensely. But, if a film is easy to work through, then it's maybe not that compelling.
Yeah.
Conversely, if I turn it on and all of a sudden the homework is put away and I'm glued to the screen, that's a great sign for the audience.
I love that secret because I think we've all had that moment. It's been pretty relatable, right? We always have a second screen, arguably the now first screen.
Agreed.
The cell phone, the iPad, or whatever the case may be, probably cell phone, while you're watching a movie, while you're binging on a series, whatever it is. And if you're like, oh, I sat here to do some work and the TV was supposed to be on in the background, but then the TV went back to being first screen.
Right.
That's an interesting go-between, the fact that you're kind of leveraging that same mindset. I'm sure critics do the same thing, right? They see the same movies all the time, and they're probably sitting there going, all right, what's this one going to be about? Am I going to actually like it? And they're probably multitasking too, right?
Well, I'd like to think the good ones don't.
I know. I'm totally like crashing their job. Like, you're not doing anything else.
But no, I think you're totally right. I mean, it's difficult not to do that in the world we live in now. And I tend to agree with you. You said something really smart in there, which is sometimes the second screen is actually the first screen. But again, that's honestly a beautiful segue to how wonderful the cinema remains, right? Because you can't. It's nice to unplug for a little while. And I honestly believe that if you do a good job with the curation, it's very easy for the audience to also stop looking at their phone. And if you do a bad job with the curation, or you as a consumer pick a movie that maybe you don't like that much, then it's hard to not be distracted by your phone. But if you go to a movie like Roma, let's say, since we were talking about it, and you're in the movie theater and you start watching it, you're lost. You forget about your phone for like the only hour and a half of your week, right?
Right.
And I think that's the reason that movie theater owners shouldn't be afraid of streaming channels. Shouldn't be afraid of Netflix. Shouldn't be afraid of Amazon Prime. Shouldn't be afraid of Hulu. I think they're all great. I think the content they're making is awesome. And I think sometimes people fall in love with the movies watching at home. And so if you watched a great film on Netflix and all of a sudden you decided, man, I want to see more movies like that, you're going to find places like Gateway Film Center, wherever you are.
It's an immersive experience, like we were saying before.
Right on. And again, if you can't look away, somebody did something right.
That's funny because it made me think about the fact that I haven't seen A Star is Born yet. And it's actually available, I think, on a streaming service. Is it Apple TV or something like that? And I'm like, Vin, look, it's there. Let's watch it. And he's like, no. He hasn't seen it yet either, right? Vin, you haven't seen it, have you? It's like, he's like, no, we can't watch it here. We have to go to the theater because what we've heard about it, I think that can also have an effect on, do you decide to go to an immersive environment or do you just watch it at home while you're multitasking? Right. That brand can follow it around, and we're still like, okay, we're holding out. We better get to the theater before it's not there anymore.
Totally. I actually saw it. I went to the premiere of Star is Born this year.
Did you?
It was at the Toronto Film Festival, and Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper were there. And,
wow.
Yes, it is a movie theater movie. It is big and loud and awesome, and I didn't look at my phone once.
Okay, that's good to hear. We're sticking with the plan then. I really want to ask you another question about yourself, but before I do, you're the one that brought up Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper. So maybe, probably not them, but I don't know. You tell me, who is somebody that you've met at festival or, you were out in LA having meetings or whatever the case may be that you nerded out about when you saw them, even if you didn't really get too close?
I'll give you two answers because the person I nerded out the most about may not be anybody else's choice, but that was Robert Rodriguez, who actually has a film in theaters right now called Alita: Battle Angel. Okay. But he made Sin City. He's made a lot of films you have seen, but I think he's a really great filmmaker, and I got to meet him at a festival. And so
you got to shake his hand?
I did. I talked to him for a while.
What'd you say to him?
I said how much I liked his work, and also, I'm not really a celebrity hound, so I tried to just ask questions.
That's why I asked who you nerded out about, because you don't seem like the type that would just like lose it just because Lady Gaga is standing across a velvet rope or something.
Well, I'm not going to lie. It was pretty cool to see Lady Gaga. But and Bradley Cooper is really, really handsome.
He is, isn't he?
So that was a little bit stunning. I think the person that I actually had a real conversation with and talked to that would make most listeners excited is Sandra Bullock. I went to a party that she was at and actually ended up talking to her for quite some time.
Really?
And she was very nice and also beautiful, stunningly
She's so
beautiful.
pretty.
And but yeah, when you go to the festival stuff, you do meet a lot of people. In Toronto this year, I met Sissy Spacek, I met Melissa McCarthy, I met Casey Affleck, because we went to a party. There was like 100 people at it, and it was full of celebrities. So
Wow.
It is a fun part of the job. You're right, I don't really lose it, but I did lose it for Robert Rodriguez. I was pretty excited.
Shout out to Robert. Awesome. What do you do to take care of yourself? What's your workout routine? Do you do any sort of like mindset resetting, anything like that?
Well, I wish I worked out more. I am very, very strict in my diet.
What's your diet like?
So I am a vegetarian.
Okay.
And I don't drink a lot of caffeine during the day. I drink a lot of water during the day. I definitely don't drink any caffeine in the evening because, again, I have sort of an early ritual, and working in the industry I work in does require me to be out a lot of evenings as well. So I need to sleep when I can sleep. I try to really go into a quiet mode on the weekends too. I still go to a lot of events in the evenings on Saturday, but I'm like about as quiet as you could imagine a human being on Saturday and Sunday afternoons. I like to read, and I like the quiet. So, but I also do work out. I still play basketball a lot, and I have little kids, so I have to chase them around all the time. So that's
how old are they now?
So my oldest actually just started college. He's 18. And then I have
That's exciting.
Yeah, it is. And I have a 12-year-old and a 7-year-old.
Wow. College. What's the plan for the career?
Well, he's a pretty talented musician.
Really?
So he is going to Ohio University and majoring in music, and also is in a couple bands, and he has scored some short films already, and won actually a film festival for his music, a score they did for a film at a festival. And he's been in a couple TV pilots. So
very cool.
So he's a really talented young man, and I think he can set the world on fire if he decides to. But he's doing great. He's really enjoying college so far.
That's awesome. Back to, you said you were a reader. Do you have any recommendations of stuff that you've read lately, or what do you tend to look at? Do you look at books that become films, or is that just cliche for me to ask?
It's not cliche to ask, and the answer is no.
Okay.
I typically I don't read anything because I know it might be adapted into a film. That doesn't mean I avoid them either.
Sure.
I just read Still Alice, which was made into a film a couple of years ago. I thought was incredible. But I do read a lot of business books.
Do you? Like what?
So the nerdier side of me that I don't talk about a lot is a real business book and organizational behavior addict. So I listen to a lot of podcasts.
Like what? What's your favorite podcast right now?
So right now I'm listening to L3 Leadership a lot.
Okay.
And that is a Pittsburgh-based leadership podcast, and I love it. It's they basically spend most of the episodes interviewing business leaders who have had success in their community and just asking them basically the same questions, which I really like because I get to hear people in different fields and how they became successful.
Yeah.
And I love, I mean, the biggest challenge of it is I'm usually listening when I'm driving and I want to take notes. But I love L3 because you can, of course, go to their site and get everything. And so I am really an organizational behavior nerd. I love talking about it. I love helping people improve. I really admire great trainers. People who can really coach someone, understand why they have the challenge they have, and help them improve. And again, that's much less interesting probably than the movie stuff.
No, not necessarily, because, we're kind of trying to do the same thing here, right? Like there's the sexy part of your job, but how do you get to that, and how do you get to have that be a part of your world and a part of your life? What's a book in that same arena? Because I think we'd be interested to hear what you've been. Well,
I'm going to give you an answer that'll be a little bit surprising. I've been rereading the Stephen Covey stuff.
Yeah.
And so I have 7 Habits I'm rereading right now, and I also got a 7 Habits workbook that I'm completing right now too. So, I could give other books that I love, but I'm really impressed with how much the Covey stuff now makes sense to me. And when I read it in my 20s, I understood that it was important. I understood it sounded right, but it was difficult for me to apply the things that I was reading. And now I think because I'm so passionate about what I'm doing, I have started to see that, living those values as well as being passionate about something is actually kind of the recipe for success. So, probably the personal value I hold the most is seeking first to understand, which I got from Covey. And we live kind of in a culture now that doesn't do that, right? It's usually the opposite. And so learning to take a step back, ask a question, practice active listening. Don't be thinking about what you're going to say. Listen to what the person says and then answering, I find to be both rewarding and challenging.
Totally.
And I'm trying to practice that in my daily life. And I do think it has made me much more effective. And I do think it is the reason I have achieved some level of success.
I couldn't agree with that more. It's something that we talk about here at Aftermark all the time. We actually just read How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. And just like you were saying, I think it resonated with me because it was my third time reading the book. But for the people who are in the organization that maybe haven't picked it up yet, because it just sort of looked like this archaic work, and there's been an updated version of it to kind of make it cool again and talk about social media. But it's like the basics, the basic principles here. Just let somebody get a question out, let somebody talk, and actually fully absorb it before you're trying to come up with some response to it, because maybe your job is just to listen and not necessarily respond. I just think it's so great that you can read a book from God knows when, and it still applies.
Sure.
Like I just love that suggestion. So I will link to that in our show notes at detailspodcast.com.
Great.
Before I ask you my last question, it's been great having you here. So
Thank you.
Appreciate your time. I know you're super busy just making this community better, and therefore the film world as well. So thank you. Where can everybody follow you before I ask my last question?
So you can follow me on Twitter at CSHamel19. Or you can, of course, if you really want to hear about the work we're doing at the Film Center, is follow the Film Center at Gateway FC on Twitter, or go to Facebook and follow us there, become a fan. We post a lot, and I'm not going to beat around the bush. We tend to talk about other people's opinions a lot, and that's sort of in keeping to what we've been talking about this whole time. But what you'll see posted in those places a lot are not just movies we're playing. I find that to be so dull. What I want to talk about is what's happening in the film world, what's going on at festivals, what you may not find if you don't have a place like us to go to. And so we're talking a lot about what's in production. What's this filmmaker that we've screened their work doing now? And so if that interests listeners, I think that's a pretty good place to go.
I'm glad you said that, because for two things. People ask me all the time, where do people need to go if they come visit Columbus? Go to the Gateway Film Center. It's a great place to just really get a feel for what our community is all about, and really what people feel when they come here and they actually get why I love Columbus, or why anybody loves Columbus. But also, if you're not here, it would be really interesting to follow what the Gateway is doing, because you're doing things so differently than the typical theater. It really presents a different perspective if somebody's not just a film buff, but just interested in culture and where it's going and what's happening again that was old in culture. And I just think that you guys do a great job of covering that. So
I think that's very kind. And I do think one of our core values at the center is to continue to innovate at all times. And sometimes innovating is playing a movie from 1992 on VHS, right? Even though it doesn't feel like it. But we have members that don't even live in Ohio. So we have members who drive in from other states because a lot of the films that we screen only screen in New York, Los Angeles, and Columbus, Ohio. We've started to receive accolades for that. The Sundance Institute picked us as one of the 20 best art houses in North America 2 years ago. Cosmopolitan magazine picked us last year as the coolest movie theater in Ohio.
Which is saying something, because we have quite a few.
We do, and we have a lot, of cool ones.
Yeah.
Even in our city, we have other independents that are doing great things.
Definitely.
And so we've started to receive the accolades both locally and nationally. But I think it's because we just keep doing our thing, right? We just keep trying to appreciate the artistry of film and the artists who make it, and build a community. And so sometimes people who live in Pennsylvania want to drive in to be part of that too.
Love that. Cool. Well, I will link to all the things we just talked about in the show notes. Again, you can follow Chris. You can follow Gateway. Chris, my final question for you. What does it mean to you to go after the life you want?
That's a great question. Well, to me, it first means to know what it is you want to, what life you do want. And I think a lot of us sort of go fire, ready, aim, right? And I see that a lot too. So I think the most important thing is knowing what it is you want to accomplish. And then once you have discovered that, just be great at the thing you're doing. Just be awesome at that. The thing I see the most specifically with young leaders, since we were talking about that a moment ago, is always trying to get to the next thing and trying to be noticed. And I think the way to really accomplish that is to just be as awesome at the thing you're doing as you possibly can, and let that be the ingredients, right? Let that be the thing. Nobody I've ever met in my life sees somebody who's doing great and goes like, man, whatever. No, they immediately gravitate to those people. And so I think if you're clear about what it is you want to accomplish, who it is you want to be, set some strategies to get yourself there, and just be great at those strategies and not worry so much about getting there. Enjoy the time, you're taking to be that.
Great answer. Thanks, Chris, for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right, let's catch the deets. Something I want you to keep in mind, do what's right for your community. It might not be great for your partners at the beginning, but if you truly know your audience, it will benefit everyone long term. Something that I really pride myself on, and I see a lot of this in what Chris talks about, is that I've always stayed very focused on who I am doing this for, who I'm truly doing this for. It doesn't mean there aren't other people involved. And yeah, there's going to be some politics of making other people happy in the process, but they should always be contributing to the cause that is making your community, your customer, your audience satisfied with what you do. It has to make good on the promise that you made. So anytime a sponsor comes to me, or a potential collaborator, or just somebody's like, hey, I want to be interviewed on your show, if they don't feel like a fit to me, I'm going to tell them no. Just like Chris would say to a big box movie production company, this blockbuster looks like it's doing great, but it's not right for us. And we would rather play this small time documentary from Istanbul. So sorry about you. Like, that's a decision that he makes for the community. Be clear about what your goals are and stick with your instincts. So it's really important to know, what are those goals? Keep them in mind. Do you have to write them down every day so that you don't forget them? It's easy to do that when we get a little bit lofty and a little ambitious and have too many goals that we're trying to go after. But either way, go with your instinct, stick with those goals, and know that it's going to take some time to get there. And no matter how much success you've had, you might have to keep going a little bit more to see that goal come to fruition. Offer challenges to your community to build the relationship. I love what Chris has done with the Groundhog Day tradition, and now they're doing this thing with the 101 horror films. This is clearly something that is kind of like a campaign, but it gets the audience involved, gets them excited, and that's building a relationship with them. The Groundhog Day challenge is been for 10 years now, and those people, a lot of them have come back and done it multiple times. I'm not kidding. They sit in a theater for 24 hours and watch the same movie over and over. It's crazy. And they sell that thing out months in advance. That's how much people want to do it. But it builds the relationship. This was very familiar to me when I thought about Veda. A lot of people, when they were following my channel in the last few years before my book Vlog Like a Boss came out, they would participate in Vlog Every Day in April or Vlog Every Day in August with me. And we always did this twice a year. And that built my relationship with so many of you who listen to this show or watch the YouTube channel, because we did it together. And it was something that was a challenge for all of us, but it brought us closer. Multitasking while consuming. I actually loved this tip. I think multitasking doesn't really exist. And it doesn't, because Chris's point here was, look, if I can keep checking email and get all my work done while a movie is playing, the movie must not be that interesting. So maybe while you're consuming, we talk about a lot of like mindless consuming. So, listening to podcasts on a treadmill or listening to an audiobook while you're driving, right? You want to kind of notice those times where you could be consuming, but you could also be getting something else done. And maybe that thing doesn't need your 100% undivided attention, and you can actually be more effective working if you have that going on. I have this happen all the time. If I'm checking email, I do have a podcast on in the background. Usually I don't pick up everything that's going on in the podcast unless it's a great podcast. And then my email will be pushed to the side. So this is something that you might want to consider in your life. You have to be really careful with this because you also don't want to get distracted from getting something important done. So again, it should be slightly mindless stuff just to see, you know what, is this even worth my time? Was I to use this as the thing that was going to get me excited on the treadmill, or could it just be on passively while I'm getting other stuff done? Something to think about there. Everything we talked about will be in the show notes. That's at detailspodcast.com. Don't forget to go check it out. All the things like following Chris and more details about the Film Center and all the tips that he shared will be there. Loved this episode. Totally a plot twist. No pun intended. Totally pun intended. So do you love getting advice straight to your earbuds? I think you do because you're here. And I'd like to share some simple steps for helping you live your best life every day. If you want my free audio training, the 7 essential details for going after the life you want, I have a little audiogram for you. All you have to do is subscribe to this podcast, take a screenshot to show you are subscribed, and email that screenshot to hello@detailspodcast.com with audiogram, please, in the subject line. We will get that right over to you. That's all for today. Thank you so much for tuning in. I appreciate it as always. If you would like to discover even more actionable tips, head over to AMYTV by popping in your browser, youtube.com/AMYTV, or you can search in the YouTube app for Amy Landino. Subscribe for good vibes, kiss the ones you love, and go after the life you want. Cheers.